Good evening, Jatan. How are you?
Hey there.
Happy Wednesday.
I'm sorry I'm late.
You're fine. You're right on time.
Happy Wednesday. How are you?
I'm doing good. Your connection is a little choppy, so
Okay,
yeah, you can turn
great.
off your video and see if that helps audio, actually.
Okay,
Perfect.
okay.
So it might just be you and I again, if that's okay with you. Um,
If that's okay with you, it's just fine with me. I get a lot out of this.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. I realized the other day, I was like, oh man, well, I guess as we were closing, like the sun is setting. It got really, really dark. So I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that was true. Yeah, it was okay. It went by fast.
It did go really, really fast. I also know, we have this block of time. Um, we may not take all of it up though. So
Okay,
usually,
perfect.
yeah, I feel like with larger groups, 2 hours is still a really long length of time to sit or to practice or to talk. Um, but I enjoy it, having that space. It doesn't feel rushed, and it allows for people to, kind of take their time and pop in. Um, so kind of being here at 7 is nice, but it's also, I like virtual because life is so hectic and we all do our best to be where we really want to be. Sometimes it
Yeah.
doesn't work out like that. And I feel like at the studio, we're so very like, we're teaching discipline and do what you need to do to get here, that it can feel really abrasive and off putting.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah,
Do you mean for yoga or for
both
meditation?
yoga and meditation. So, there's after a certain number of minutes, especially like when you're centering, like you can't really get up and let people in. So people do get it, but there's some anxiety about like, oh, I gotta get to practice, I gotta get to yoga, I gotta get to meditation. And
Yeah,
I don't miss that.
you're
I don't.
right.
I don't. It's stressful even for
Yeah.
teachers, I can remember my child was missing and missing in the sense of she wasn't where she was supposed to be and nobody had seen her for some hours and it was
Mhm.
starting to get dark and I had to teach at the studio. So I have been driving around for about 90 minutes and I can't find her and I'm freaking out. And I also uh, didn't have time to find a sub. So I had to reach the
Mhm.
studio owners, and the owner doesn't have her own children. It was really weird. She was like, well, maybe she'll just come back home. And I was like,
Oh my
it
God.
was I was like, wow, you really do care that I teach these 5 people. And I think that's when I realized that I never want to own a brick and mortar studio. I never want to
Oh,
have to sell a practice. I don't want to have
oh,
to sell a sit. I don't want to have to sell yoga asana to pay the rent. That's not what I want
okay.
to do. And
Right.
I enjoy virtual because it removes all of those barriers. We've commercialized it, turned it into a business, and you have to
Mhm.
treat it as such. But um, it's nice to work from home, have the spaces that it's easy for everybody to get to at a time for people to practice. So
Mhm.
because you're like, oh, sorry for being late. It's totally fine. Totally fine.
Okay. Great. Great.
So, let's start with highlights and tensions. And so, um, a highlight is just something, a highlight of your week, of your day, and then maybe something that's kind of challenging for you or kind of heavy at the moment. And
Sure.
sometimes we don't have tensions that we're willing to share, and that's totally fine. So
Mhm.
I will begin with my tension. I am inviting people to a fire pit at the yacht club that I'm a member of, and I just hope that it's not too cold. Like, I'm worried about people not being prepared to be outdoors. So that's kind of like, I hate inviting people and they're not ready to really like engage in the activity. I want them to have in the back of my head. And the highlight is I'm inviting friends for a fire pit at the lake. So my highlight is definitely related to my tension.
Hey,
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. So
that sounds like a really ideal post almost coming out of the pandemic, people aren't quite ready to go to a restaurant. That sounds nice. That's a really creative idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very clear on what my tensions and my great things are. Once again, I just feel like I'm continuing to grow in my meditation practice, and it just makes my days go by so much more smoothly. And I really connected with the idea of connecting with the vitality of the moment, or living in the vitality of the moment. It was actually something I heard 7A say in a video. And when I'm really on top of my meditation and making time for it and doing it at the right time, it just makes everything sweeter and more bearable. If I wasn't doing it right now, I just will feel like I would be in knots, like literally and figuratively. So I have a friend whose father, someone that I've been really close with for the past 3 months, whose father's dying, and just kind of like going through that with him is very heavy, outside of the other, mental health challenges that come with being so somewhat isolated. In the past few months, I feel like I'm coming out of the isolation. I'm making, time very consciously with friends to spend time with them. But it's been rough. Like, overall, this year has been very energetically for me tense, and just it's been rough waters. Like, it's day to day for me. So, but as long as I have my videos, I'm good. My meditation videos and time to lay down, it just kind of smooths everything out. So, sounds cliche, but it's so real for me right now.
Yes. All my love to your friend who, transitioning or experiencing that kind of final transition can't be easy.
Right.
Remember my grandmother, she passed away at 103. And her last day, in her body was just, a moment that I'll never forget, because I can remember feeling as though it's so unfair for her to be conscious about her transition, and that it's painful as the body, as the systems turn off. And so they slow down and they turn off, and it's kind of one by one. And so, the no more receiving water or food, right? The body kind of releasing fluids. But there has been there's no digestion because there's no food. Each system, and then there's the death rattle. So as the body's light goes out, it's a very humbling and intimate experience. But it was still, I was angry,
Yeah.
like, she doesn't deserve to feel that. And even with the morphine, I can't imagine, she can't articulate what she's experiencing, But I just thought that she had lived such a good life. She deserved to kind of just slip away in her sleep,
Okay.
you know. But it's,
Yeah.
you know, it's not my call, right?
Right,
And
right, right.
it was it was great to know her for as long as I did. And I'm blessed to have had her faithfulness in God or in a
Mm,
higher power, because
yes.
I think one of the things that I take away from her and elders from that generation is that they were able to live
Yes.
for 100 years easy
Uh-huh.
through a life that wasn't so easy.
There
You know,
you go. Yeah.
you think
Mm-hmm.
about what it must have felt like to be born in 1903, 1913, what it must have felt like to be aware of your Blackness in relationship to whiteness at that time.
There you
How it,
go.
how it must have felt, um, learning your place, as well as being nourished by others to not accept the place that they're putting you, but the fear
Yes.
of
Yes.
pulling away from that in any way could result in your life being lost in one in in inhumane ways, you know?
Yes.
And I think back to how brave our elders were,
Yes.
their parents for protecting them and teaching them their place, while
Yes.
kind of being like the spook who sat by the door, like, stay alive, but
Yes. Yes.
don't forget, God didn't put you here to be the tail, right? And so
Listen,
everything. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I know, I love what you're saying because this is something I think about a lot. Both of my grandmothers are still alive. They were women of the 50s. Um, just, oh my God, they were just so well put together, so just immaculate. They just carried themselves like queens. And I just don't understand how they could live through what they lived through and still carry themselves with so much dignity. You know what I mean? And I think about it all the time. I'm always trying to measure myself up to that standard. And it's the greatest legacy I feel like that generation passed to us, that sometimes I don't know if we have learned from enough, just how they were able to live with so much dignity
Yeah,
and pride despite the circumstances. So I just really appreciate what you're saying.
I think about, so I call it suffering with grace.
Yes.
And there's there's this reality that, um, they were able to accomplish so much for themselves, um, with the help of allies, of course, but never believing the lies that they are less than,
Yes.
never believing the lies
Yes.
less than. And
Absolutely.
one has to ask, how do you have the institution of religion and the tangible Bible, with so many hands and
Mm-hmm.
interpretations, and religion and the Bible can be used to oppress, and that same religion, that same sermon, that same Bible, that same passage can be used to liberate. And then you realize it's just the user, you know it's user.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes when things are mishandled, or injury happens, it's user error. And
Mm.
my grandmother was I didn't know she was Catholic, born Catholic, until she passed away, because we were Baptist missionary, baby. We were in the Baptist church.
Okay.
But her ability to live and love and fall in love and have a family and raise children that were, in the projects and went to college, all with a fourth grade education, is just impressive, that she was able
It's,
to enjoy
yeah,
her life in her Black body during a time where being in a Black body made you pray. Being in a Black body
yeah,
clearly put you, under others' feet. Um,
yes,
I honor that because that's where I come from. Her
yes,
rejection of society saying this is who you are, and her faithfulness in that God gave her breath to be alive. And she's not going to let life or racism or poverty or hatred distract her from the blessing of being alive. And I thought, how lucky we are to be Black, right?
yes,
Because of the humans that are currently on this earth, most of them have some claim to land or water. Most wars and fights are over resources and ownership and attachment to a system that we didn't create, that we don't even know how to be a part of, and that really and truly isn't ours, right?
mm-hmm.
And Black people, African Americans, are one of the only groups of created people with literally no land, no waters to claim. And the only
Okay,
thing that we're doing is trying to breathe in a Black body. That's it. That's the only thing
yep,
we're focused on, is being able to be alive, right? And what a fast track to enlightenment, to have no distractions. And for years, I would say, like, oh, we don't have this. We don't, it's not like we have our own land and we have our own water. And that's it's a lie, because all is ours to share. And to be able to claim the only thing that I really want is to be able to breathe freely in the vessel that I was born in,
wow, yeah,
is a gift, in my opinion, at how I see things now. Before it was like, oh, we're the ancestors of slaves. Well, those are around the world, if we want to be accurate. There are ancestors of slaves that don't look like us, right? And so I stopped telling myself this story, parts of the story, in a way that made it seem like it was only us, right? Or only African Americans that have descended from slaves. That's not true. And so I was living with like the oppression Olympics, like, oh, we're the most hurt people in the world. Like, what does that even mean? And why do I want to claim that?
yeah,
And I started to open myself up to ask myself, like, what is the gift of being Black? And it was clear as day that we're not confused about what's ours, because the only thing that's really and truly ours is this body. That's it. Everything else, is its own, right? So land, water, all that stuff, it exists. It, it it's it innately exists, right? It'll be here when we're gone. It doesn't need us to be here.
mm-hmm.
And so the legacy of my grandmother is powerful for me, because in this practice, that we say that that meditation is the path of a warrior, right? And the only thing that you're really and truly fighting against is yourself, right? Your ego, the small I, your thoughts in your head, you. Um, and knowing that means that I'm in control of how it is that my life feels. I'm in control of understanding how I perceive what's good and bad, what's favorable or unfavorable, what I hate, what I love. Like those things are relative and dependent upon who I am in a moment, right? And who I am in a moment changes depending on my thoughts and my emotions. But that's really not who I am. But when you practice, there's a level of belief that one has to have in order for the practice to even make sense.
Okay.
One can say, I'm a meditator and I meditate and it's not working. Well, what's your definition of working?
Right.
What's your definition of the practice is not working? What are your expectations? What are your attachments? What's the list, the check that you need to check off the boxes for you to acknowledge that the practice is working? And there's, just one little word, and that's faith, right? Can't see it. You have to trust it in your heart. And that's something that my grandmother had. And her faith in what she believed in was powerful. And to her, made things very, very real. And so with that, she had one prayer, which was peace be still. And it took me to really understand why peace be still. With all of the things that were going on the outside of the world, she can't control those things, When she passed away, I did things like estimate how many times her heart must have beat in her life, how many blinks her eyes made, how many times she must have hugged people. 103 years is a long time. I also went back and tried to calculate how many Black towns were massacred in the first 13 years of her life. Like I was really interested, like, how did you, from that one person, she was the youngest of 13. She had 7 children of her own. And from just her, there were 113 of us, just her. And
wow.
I wondered, how in the first 13 years of your life can you be not just unfazed by random Black murders and lynchings and family members going missing, to have the audacity to still love,
Right.
to have the audacity to raise children, to be good people.
Yes.
And that's what's impressive the most, is that she didn't let the realities of the world distract her from the other truth, which is the soul is here for its own joy, right?
I'm writing that down.
And if the soul is here for its own joy, we can't control the vessel that the soul enters into, right? Like the soul has to have a packaging in order to experience the joy of being human, right? The identities, we've created these hierarchies. We've created who's valuable, who's not. All of those things were created. That doesn't make them real. They were crafted with the intention of protecting the egos of others, and other people bought into it. We all buy into it, whether it is buying into it like the South Side is better than the West Side, right?
Right.
Or Chicago is better than the rest of the state of Illinois. Coke is better than Pepsi. I'm being silly, but we've created these cultures
Mhm.
in a way that helps validate we're better than you. But just because you say you're better doesn't mean that you're having a better human experience. Doesn't mean that you're happier. Doesn't mean that you have more joy. Doesn't
Mhm.
mean that you have more divinity. Doesn't mean any of those things. And so her story invites me to reflect on how it is that as people of color, we've been able to accomplish so much with so little. At one point in time, not even being able to go to school with white people, and we just made our own. Not being able to publish in their newspapers, so
Right.
we made our own. Not being able to put our money in their banks, so
Right.
we made our own. Not being able to go to their doctors, so we had our own. It was kind of like, all right, and we're still gonna be, like, what did they expect us to do? They didn't expect for us
My-
to thrive, and they didn't expect for us to
Right.
not create to not create the hierarchy that they had created even for their own people, right? The classes.
Right.
I don't know if that really, existed in our communities pre-segregation. I don't know if we had
Mhm.
the turning the nose up at Black folk. Maybe we did, maybe we did, like Northerners versus, people in the South, definitely, which is still very much true, slow and ignorant. Like, this is the stereotypes of Southern in comparison to Northern. And I wonder how many of the habits or the ways that we see each other have come from lessons we've learned from our step parents that have been caring for us so well for 400 years at the time, So
Mhm.
knowing that she had that
Right.
prayer of peace be still really empowered me to acknowledge that the only thing that I can hold on to is that. And if I wish to touch upon the joy that my soul is here for, then stillness is absolutely necessary. I can't let all the other truths of the world, the hurtful truths
Mhm.
of the world, bury the other truths of the world, right? A lot of this
Mhm.
practice, the practice of yoga and meditation, um, in my lineage, we say yoga is the uniting of consciousness and the heart. It is a balance of breath, body, and spirit. And with that balance, are we allowing for our lives, or are we allowing ourselves to see that multiple things are true at the same time, right? Yes, there is racism and there is love. Both of them exist at the same time. I would also argue that we load things. So racism feels heavier than love. But is it really, right? Or are they equal? And we interpret things that are unfavorable as being more hurtful,
Mhm.
right? And so these are the things that kind of go through my mind with, what does it really mean for, what do you have to do? What do you have to accept to be truth in order for peace be still to be real for you? And for me, it is, things have to be equally weighted. The unfavorable and the things that I don't want, and the things that I completely reject, and experiencing those things don't get double points in comparison to the things that I love, the things that I favor, the things that I accept. I am not going to weight these things more because I don't like them. Because what happens is that you live life with these attachments, right? Attachments and aversions. And if you double down on the things that you find unfavorable, so a bad thing happens. So we're all leveled. Bad thing happens, it jumps 2. Good thing happens, it jumps half. Another bad thing happens, maybe it's exponential, it jumps 4. Another good thing happens, just creeps up another half, right? That's not balance. Can I receive life? Can I receive life with equanimity? Can I let the things that I am hearing and seeing not impress upon me in ways where I continue to hurt myself? So another thing my grandmother told me was, don't let it hurt so bad that you hurt yourself. And she was so profound in just a few words, but old people talk a lot. They gossip, but when they got something to say, it comes out in like less than 10 words. And her lesson, or what I took from that, was the same thing as the practice, acknowledging that bad things happen, hurtful things happen, they will happen. Remind yourself how you've gotten over them. But you don't have to become the hurt. You don't have to become the anger.
There you go.
What does that mean, becoming?
There you go.
A thing happens and you stop eating. So you end up in the hospital. The thing didn't put you in the hospital. You not eating compromised your system. You put yourself in the hospital. And so we let things live in ways inside of us that is disruptive, that is in conflict with our wishes to grow. And many of us don't have a variety of tools to get ourselves out of that rat race.
Okay.
Some people have prayer. That is their escape from that mental pain, the lies that they tell, the torment, right? They give it to God. And of course, you have to have faith that once you pray it, that it will work itself out. It was going to work itself out anyway. Like the interesting part is that we think that we have some control over this. We think that we seem to think that we control any of this, and we do not. That the working out was going to happen anyway. Right? Like, life is dynamic.
I need to hear that. I probably learned that lesson. I was just saying, I really need
hear that. I haven't quite learned that lesson. I don't think I've seen my issues work themselves over time long enough. I guess I haven't had to see that, but point where I see it and it's coming back my mind, and maybe that's the first time I really just put that wet. Thank you.
Absolutely welcome. You know, this life in a Black body can really be distracting if you let it.
Yes.
I don't wish to waste every moment of joy being confused by the work of the body. Like, people see me as a Black woman and they will treat me in the way that they think a Black woman should be treated, not because I agree, but this is what they have decided in their heads. This is the lie that they are attached to. This is the lie that they're attached to that maybe didn't come from them. This is a belief that might have been given to them by somebody that they love, somebody that they care for and honor. So imagine one of your grandmothers that you adore teaching you how to hate. She's never steered you wrong. She's kissed all of your boo-boos. She makes the best apple pie. She's nice to all of your friends. She's helped you solve all of your problems. You adore her. And she's taught you that white people are evil. They're not to be trusted. And we hate them. So you pick that up and you carry that forward because everything that she's given to you has been spot on. And, you know, realizing that the hate that we're experiencing, first of all, one has to ask themselves, like, what is hate? And can you define it? And if you were a yogi, how would you define it? And I realized that hate is love turned in one direction. And when that kind of came to me, I said, well, that's not offensive to me. Me wanting the love that someone is unwilling to give makes me feel a little jealous. That's what I feel about not getting the love that I think I should get from you. Jealousy. And I said, well, I'm not a jealous person. So how can I change my relationship to those who hate me because of me not looking like them? And realizing that their thoughts are not their own. The people who have given others those thoughts were loved or loving in some way. And it was passed down like a treasured, valuable heirloom. Protected. Imagine something as ancestral being passed down from generation to generation to generation. You savor it, you tell the stories about it, right? It is precious to you, and all who were before you keep it and pass it down. It's treasured. Knowing that that's how the hate for our people has moved is a little weird. I feel such deep compassion and sadness for those who were robbed of learning to not love me on their own.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, they're missing out. They're not all the way privileged, you know?
they have been lied to.
Absolutely.
They have been, like we are not the ones being controlled. We are not the ones stuck.
Mm.
We are not the ones oppressed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It all depends on your definition, right? And what you're willing to see as true. If you think about oppression in this way, if these are the boundaries, then yes, we are oppressed. But if you let it breathe a little bit and you expand it, guess what? Oppression looks a little bit different. I would argue a person who is indoctrinated and brainwashed and never had their own experience of, those are the people that are really enslaved.
Okay.
And that's scary.
Yeah.
I don't envy that. I don't care how much land they have or how much money they have. I'm not jealous of how they got it. I go to sleep peacefully every day knowing that my job, my goal, my people, my desire to mobilize liberation isn't just for me. It is for other people of color. It is also for those who are not of color, who have been brainwashed and lied to and indoctrinated to believe that squishing us is necessary for them to feel expansive.
Yes.
Oh, how sad.
Yes. Yeah.
How
Mm-hmm.
sad.
Right.
How lonely. Seeing my grandmother live in poverty but still carry herself like a queen. I ain't never been pressed to live a certain way like I see people who are white live. I've learned the definition of satisfied, right? I've learned that the pursuit of things can create suffering for myself and others. That's not what I wish. My grandmother always had enough, and enough was enough. Or was a burden. Enough to share was a blessing. I'm grateful for those lessons because I get to pass them to my children about what's important in life. But don't forget the work that we must do as people of color. Like, we're not here by accident. And so while we are doing the work of liberating ourselves and bringing along allies, we have other levels of awareness that we have to access before any collective movement happens.
Okay.
So if we believe that we don't have enough to do the work, we'll never have enough, right? How did we have enough to start our own HBCUs with no funding from the government? How we do that? But now we need more to just start. I refuse to believe that there's only one pathway to liberation, and that is the traditional policy, grants,
Mm.
foundations,
Mm.
like the system
Mhm.
structure of the, I
Okay,
refuse to believe that that's the only way. I refuse.
okay, okay.
I want to find out, what did our ancestors believe in themselves that gave them the unmitigated gall to not ask
Right,
permission, to not ask
right.
permission, and to show up for each other as a way for showing up for themselves?
Yes.
What kind of agreements did they make in themselves? What kind of agreements did they make as partners and spouses? What kind of agreements did they make as a family? What kind of agreements did they make as a community? How did they create this collective consciousness of, this is who we are? This is how we move. This is what our goal is as people. And let us not get confused. We are not them, nor should we try to be. And I want for us to have the ability to discern the difference between what it is we think, like the messages that are coming in from all different places, versus listening to ourselves. I think we've gotten away from that, not hurting ourselves when things hurt. Like, we have this ego around, like, oh, we've been through enough suffering. Like, you do know that suffering is long, like, it's here. It's here. It's not going anywhere. But your relationship to it can change. And that prayer of peace be still. What is it that we have to do at the individual level as people of color in order for us to not be distracted by the things that are not priority?
Yes.
So if we know that we are unbanked and underbanked, and if we know that our buying power is tremendous, are we serious about reversing the harm that we're doing to ourselves with the resources that we currently have? Right? Like, we can't always say it's your, like, on some level, we have to take accountability for our action and inaction at a personal level. And we have to untether ourselves from ego and attachments in order to kind of illuminate from within. And I'll say this, and then we kind of move into our practice. At one point, I made $18,000 a year. My sister made the same amount of money. We lived very different lives. My $18,000 looked very different from her $18,000. My $18,000 was
Interesting.
enough. Her $18,000 required resources inputted from both of my parents. Somebody said, "You look like you make at least 90,000." I said, "That's interesting.
Wow.
You can look at my salary. I make 18,000." I was very proud of that, right? And I'm like, what does a $90,000 salary person look like anyway? I guess I fit the bill. And it is, are we wise with what it is that we have?
Yes.
And can you accept that you have enough?
Yes.
And can you touch upon, maybe you have more than enough to share?
Yeah.
That we are rich beyond our wildest dreams. Totally depends on the currency that you value.
Okay.
And if you value coins and cash, you might hit that poverty level. But if it has nothing to do with, it has nothing to do with money, it has nothing to do with tangible things, I would say awareness is wealth. Being aware of I am me, I am the soul inside, I feel like a queen. And I think that's what our grandmothers and great aunts knew.
Mm-hmm.
I am divine. It's why they looked divine.
Mm-hmm.
You feel me? Poor as hell.
Absolutely.
But looked
Absolutely.
great. You know, we couldn't put our finger on it. Like, how is it
Right.
that you carry
Right.
yourself as if you are floating? Sweetheart, because I am. I have
Yes.
breath in my body. Do you not know who you are? You know, like
Yes.
they just had this faith in that this is who I am. And they were able and
Yes.
everything they touched, they the way
Yes.
they adorned them, you saw it.
The
That's the
way
only
they,
difference. And they were poorer than us, but look
yes.
so rich and healthy and happy,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to get to.
Me too.
That's who I want to be like when I grow up.
Absolutely. That's
And
always
they
been the
didn't have,
goal.
and it's like they didn't have as many distractions as we had. They didn't have as many attachments
Mm.
as we have. The opportunity to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
invited to attach to something. Very, you know,
Mm-hmm.
humility and grace, and the suffering was a different kind of suffering. We don't
Okay.
have the same suffering that they have. We got some bougie
I know
suffering
that's right.
going on. You know, we got bougie
Right.
suffering. Like, we wouldn't last a day in 1928. Oh my God, I'd be crying in a corner, in a field, trying not to be seen. Like I
Ooh,
couldn't do it.
grandma. Oh, she's got some stories. Mm.
I couldn't do it. You know.
Yeah.
So let's find ourselves in a comfortable seat, finding your feet grounded. If you're sitting, allowing your legs to cross, reaching the crown of your head away from the body, and looking for a position of the body where it's easy for the body to breathe. This morning I was in meditation talking about, you know, sometimes we say, oh, the breath, or your breath, or my breath. And today it felt just really appropriate to acknowledge that the body is breathing, that the breath is here for the body. So do your best to position the body in a way where there's some balance between effort and ease.
Yes.
Feel the breath sliding into the body. Feel the breath moving as well. As you witness the breath, pay attention to how the breath moves into the nostrils. You may find that the right nostril is more open than the left. Or the left is more open than the right. Just being aware of the subtle shifts of the way that the body breathes. Because as you practice, you may notice a shift. So it is very true that You do not breathe equally into the body through both nostrils at the same time. One will always be clearer than the other. One side representing your feminine side and the other masculine. So you may notice things about yourself when your right nostril is open in comparison to when your left is open. You can begin to shift your awareness away from the nostrils bring your attention to just experiencing the breath. What does it look like to simply watch and observe? If you feel yourself floating away on a thought, the moment you become aware that you're no longer linked to your breath, simply come back. Talked a little earlier about having enough. Last week, I introduced the concept of the 5 states of consciousness, which include fantasy or imagination, incorrect understanding, dreamless sleep, memory, and correct understanding. Many of our actions and interactions begin with thought. That thought makes us feel. Feeling makes us respond. But what if the thought wasn't true? Feelings can't discern the difference between true and false. The brain surely cannot. The brain is just the organizer. It's the storage system. It's the collector. It analyzes. But it cannot discern. It is not wise. What stories or beliefs or thoughts are you holding on to that have affirmed and validated that you don't have enough yet to free yourself from the thing? And to be honest, we can't really teach what we don't practice. And so before we can honestly do liberation work for our people, what is it that we have? What skills have we even produced? How have we liberated our own selves? And to find the natural rhythm of your breath again. Bringing your attention attention to the breath is moving easier through the opposite nostril this time. Giving yourself any movement that's necessary. And slowly opening your eyes. So to give you an opportunity to share about your sit or any questions.
Oh, I just want to say that was so soulful. You spoke to so many things that I feel like I always talk to myself about, that are sit deep on my spirit regularly. I'm super connected to my grandmothers. My grandmother raised me. So I'm just really extremely grateful for your reflections and your insight. In the meditation, I almost fell asleep, but it was very grounding and refreshing. And I know it's setting the stage for me to sleep soundly and make my journey tomorrow. And hopefully the day after that, as long as I continue, and the day after that. And even if I don't continue, the most it can be. And I just feel prepared to be present and mix gratitude. So
Thank you for sharing. We have one more Wednesday, Japan. So excited. So with that, take a nod in our head and our hands to our heart. Allow some gratitude to bubble up out of your heart. Giving yourself thanks for prioritizing space for you, the space for stillness, the space to remind yourself of who you are. Thanking yourself for the memories of your grandmothers, the voices from when you were a little girl, and maybe even inspiring you to make some new memories moving forward with them while you have them here.
I know that's right.
So the highest potential in me acknowledge the highest potential in you. Om Shanti, 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 peace, peace, peace. Have a beautiful balance of your Wednesday evening, Japan. Ashe. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Have a beautiful night.
Hey.
See you next week.